What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones. Don't forget from our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clements Bridge Road. I mentioned if you walk in right now, you can get the cash, you can get the store credit. You get $50 worth of store credit. You mentioned BYP, they'll throw in another 30%. You can't beat that. A lot of NFL news coming down and a little humble pie served on a Sunday afternoon in Philadelphia. Our good friend, our NFL insider, Lloyd Vance, of course, does a great job. Host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Broad Street South. At Lloyd Vance on X, kind enough to jump on a Tuesday edition of BYP. And I'm wondering, did you get any texts or calls or emails or maybe pigeons with some notes and letters from your family and friends that probably got on me for saying the 49ers were just a better team? And then what happens on Sunday? The 49ers absolutely friggin' steamrolled the Philadelphia Eagles. How are you, my friend?
Doing good, Q. And it was one of those situations where if during the game I got a few sprinklings here and there, like, oh man. But then it was, boy, you told me this was going to happen. I said, well, I hate to say I told you so, but I study and look at this stuff all the time. And you and I had talked about not lucky, but fortunate the
Yeah,
Eagles had been, whether it's the penalties, whether it's, a fumble, they had that key fumble that their own guys jump on. And the Niners came in there very angry and they wanted to show that, hey, and you're a boxing guy, you know how it is. It was almost like the weigh-in. It started right from there. You know what I mean?
100%.
During the warm-ups, these guys, they were mouthy. They were
Yep.
saying, we're here to fight. And they were. And they rolled up 456 total yards in this game. And the key cue, obviously, was the line of scrimmage. We talked about that in our preview.
Yep.
Their line was just dominant, particularly the left side. They were running behind Trent Williams, Grant, who's the left guard, and Kittle, and they piled up 146 rushing yards. So at the line of scrimmage, they were able to dominate, and they just took the Eagles out with body shots, one after the other. And then that second half, it just became a laugher. And then, there was just all kinds of madness that we could talk about in a few minutes with the Eagles. And where do they go from here is the big case.
Yeah, you brought up a real good point. I thought if McCaffrey had about a buck 30 total, 130 total yards, they were going to win that game. I think he had 135, but you saw that the 49ers, and I can appreciate the boxing analogy you threw out there, because you go to the body, the head's going to fall. They got in the heads of the Philadelphia Eagles. They bullied the bullies. That's really what that was. And I know people will look at this and gloss over the fact that, well, it's a revenge game. It was all about the 49ers. The Eagles are going to be okay. That's not the case, because I haven't heard anyone in the past 24, 48 hours. You can't gloss over certain things. When zone coverage is destroying you, when you can't stop the run, when you don't run the football, when your head coach, who is so braggadocious and so cocky, runs his mouth after wins and really can't say shit after a loss, but more importantly, doesn't have the team up to play. See, that's my biggest gripe. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's not a good head coach. I'm not going to stick him in the Hall of Fame at this moment. I'm just not going to throw Sirianni in Canton. He's a good head coach. He's a young coach. He's going to grow in the position more. But how do you have a team that's 10-1, that knows they have a team coming into their building, okay, has the revenge factor, people doubting and questioning the quarterback and Purdy, and then the conversation is, well, if he doesn't get hurt last year, and all the Eagles fans and the pundits said, the Eagles were just a better team. How do you not get up for that game? And the other issue is you cannot beat the San Francisco 49ers when you're kicking field goals. And that second one, that's a product of the quarterback, who was an MVP last week, and everyone said, this is why you pay him, holds on to the football. And now all of a sudden, you got to kick a long field goal. It's 6-0 the 49ers. scored a touchdown, 7-6. They get the ball back for the game was over after that second drive. I mean, you're talking 6 touchdown drives, 70-something odd yards. They just ran the ball. They dominated. They bullied the Philadelphia Eagles. But can we talk a little bit about how the media is not pushing the head coach and say, how do you not get your team up for this type of game? Because they were not up to play. And that falls on the head coach.
This coaching staff, they rested on their laurels, Q, and they thought, okay, we overcame 2 very tough AFC battles. They got lucky against
Yes.
the Chiefs on the road. MVS drops that ball. That whole game is different. And then they played a tough game against the Bills where they win in overtime. And as you said, everybody's saying, oh, Jalen Hurts and his defense. But there were some foreshadowing things in both those games, particularly when you have a receiving core that includes a tight end and the backs and all your receivers that can get open at will against a defense like the Eagles. That is a big problem. This Eagles team has a huge problem in the middle of the field, Q. We talked about George Kittle as an X factor. I talked about him in our preview. He had 4 catches on 6 targets, 68 yards, 3 for first down. He had 17 yards per catch. So he's running free over the middle. And in Deebo Samuel, he had that rushing touchdown and then 2 huge plays of 40 yards or more of catches. And they were all across the middle. And we see Blankenship having issues over the middle. And then their linebackers. Morrow, he was missing tackles out there. They did go and shine Shaq Leonard yesterday. We'll see if how much he has left. He had back surgery, and I think the Colts kind of got rid of him because it's a medical issue. But the Eagles have problems in terms of the middle of the field, and this exacerbated. So they don't have much time to rest because they got to go to Dallas, and Dallas wants revenge as well.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you don't know exactly what Leonard's going to give them. You just don't know. I mean, who's to say? It's not like offensive tackle just going there and just pass block, or defensive end. I need you to just go and get the quarterback. It's just a different position right now. You got to get caught up to speed. But this is what stood out, and this tells you. And it's funny because we call them fans, right? They're fanatical fans for a reason. When they're winning, best team in the NFC. When they lose or get blown out, it's friggin' crickets. But this was a dog walking. I mean, this is exactly what this was. The 49ers' first 2 drives, 6 total plays minus 6 yards, okay? Then they went 11, 85 yards, touchdown, 10 for 90, touchdown, 7 for 75, touchdown, 5 for 77, touchdown, 12 for 75 for touchdown, 2 of 48 for touchdown, 4 9 yards, end the game. See you later. Get the hell out of here, Eagles. That is a woodshed. It's exactly what it is. That was a woodshed game. The Eagles came into that game reading their press clippings, sticking out their chest, acting tough, being the wise guy, being the tough guy, being the bully. And the 49ers said enough is enough. And for everyone that killed the 49ers last year in Deebo Samuel talking about, hey, if we had our quarterback, we would have train wrecked in that NFC Championship. Guess what? There's some validity to it. Now, do we think the outcome is the same as what we saw Sunday? I'm not saying that. But the quarterback position, you don't have Purdy last year. Again, the Eagles dog walk them. Roles reverse. Purdy goes out, plays exceptionally well. The defense does the job. They shut down that offense. The run defense gets gashed by the 49ers. They get the Hurts. They rattle him a little bit. Sirianni gets out-coached, and they got friggin' dog walked. Like, you can't gloss over this. And the issue is, and you illustrated an excellent point, you lose to Buffalo, you get a gift from Miami, you get a gift against Buffalo, a gift from Kansas City. You go up against a team that's physically put together to punch you in the mouth and take shots. And this is how you respond. And that is a major problem. I can't chalk this up to it's just a blimp. I can't, because if they play the 49ers again in the playoffs, which we believe they're going to meet, maybe in the NFC Championship, the 49ers already showed they can come into Philly and beat this team.
They did. And now they have no fear in it. And Shanahan is going to make the adjustments, but both sides need to look at this film and say, okay, we need to learn from this, because as you said, the Eagles, they just kept doing the same thing over and over again. Well, we're 10-1. We're 10-1. We're winning these games. We're the best team in the National Football League. Well, they have a lot to clean up, and especially defensively. I always look at the defense, Q. This defense, it's not stopping anybody. And then in our preview, you made a great point. You were talking about they had to establish DeAndre Swift. In this game, he had 6 rushes, 13 yards,
Yep.
and he only averaged 2.17 yards per carry. He had no first downs in this game. So, and he takes a big shot and he has to leave. So the Eagles have to figure out that balance because right now they're too pass heavy. Yes, they had a lot of big passing yards at the end, a lot of them when the Niners game was kind of out of hand. But the Eagles have a lot of work to do. And like I was saying earlier, they got to go to Dallas. And this is a Sunday night football matchup for the division. And Dallas knows if Dak Prescott did not step out on that 2-point conversion, they probably win that game.
How about when you mention the coaching too, right? We get on these coordinators, but Sirianni did not coach a very good game. He's a coach that has been known to be very aggressive, take shots, especially on 4th and short, especially if they're going to try to pull out the tush push. Couple opportunities here. And I was a little shocked that they punted. They're down 15, 28-13, 4th and 3 from the Philadelphia Eagles 32-yard line. And again, they elect to punt the football. So we're talking about a head coach that's so aggressive. Here you go. We're going to take the shots. They didn't do it, and the 49ers went right down the field conversely, and they scored nonetheless to put the game out of reach. But I believe right now what you're seeing is offensively, they don't have an identity. They don't. You take away a couple of the big chunk plays from Brown off the slants early on. You mentioned they didn't run the football at all. They need to establish the ground game, especially against a physical team like the 49ers. And the offensive line started to bend, but you just saw the pressure coming from San Francisco. They were pushing the pocket. They were making life uncomfortable for Jalen Hurts. We saw him hang on to the football too long. We saw him take some bad, sacks. I think he was sacked, and I had to pull it up three
Three
times.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, if we want to sit there and say coverage sacks, whatever, I have to go look at the all 22. But point being is, I can't figure out what this team's identity is offensively. And typically you can get away with it week 2, week 3, week 4. What do we always say? Defenses are always ahead of the offenses, but now we're in week 13, creeping into week 14. And I still don't know what this team is. I feel as though it's Jalen, go out there. Hey, AJ, hey, DeAndre, hey, Smith, do me a favor, go to the Chevy and cut across. Like there's no rhyme or reason to what you're doing schematically, offensively. And if I'm an Eagles fan, that would scare the hell out of me because now you're going up against a Dallas team. You still got some tough games coming up. You're trying to get home field advantage. But even if you get it and you're doing it by smoke and mirrors, you're going to keep getting exposed. So where are you at right now with these Eagles? And you look at this team and say, okay, what is their identity?
Yeah, Keon, and that's important what you're saying there because they keep saying we haven't played our best game yet. We're ascending. Well, at this point in the season, week 13, you are who you are, and your deficiencies are who you are. There's the trade deadline's long gone. They have to figure out how to make this work, and I think a lot of it, and a lot of people glossed over it going into the season. There are 2 new coordinators. These 2 new guys are learning on the job, and specifically on that defense. I think he's not fixing things. What was Desai just an underling under Fangio? Did he learn, or maybe he needs to change up some things, get some more blitzes, stop playing so much zone coverage, and then we talk about personnel at this point in the season, and like Eli Ricks is out there, he's their nickel corner, and quite frankly, he's not very good. So their teams are targeting him, and they know to go after him. So Dallas, CD Lamb, he's been going off the last couple of weeks, and I'm sure he's going to have a big game. And then offensively, a huge loss for them is Dallas Goedert with that broken form. They don't have anybody to work the middle and to help out Smith and Brown, who we were talking about earlier.
And you also can't kick field goals against 49ers. I mean, you look at their drive, even when they had a 3rd and 6, it was a swing pass to Gainwell. Then on 1st down, they don't run it. They try to throw. Then they try to run it on second down. They pick up 3 yards. Now you have a third and long, which plays right into San Francisco's hands. It's an incomplete pass, 4th and 7. Again, they go for the field goal. 49ers punt. Philadelphia, their very next drive. Again, I'm going into 49ers territory. 1st and 10 at the 49, at the 40. They run it with Boston Scott, so no Swift. 2nd and 8. It's a swing pass for 3 yards to Swift. Now you have 3rd and 5, which is somewhat manageable. They pick it up, but again, they don't run on first down. They don't run twice on first down when they get a penalty, mind you. Then they have a 2nd and 6. And what happens? He takes the sack. 3rd and 21. Now you go short pass where you're just trying to make it a more manageable field goal. I mean, that's on the play calling, which ultimately you have to say, well, you have to execute when you have the opportunity. But, and we'll talk about this later in the week, you're not going to be able to get away with field goals this late in the season. And again, even if they lose to Dallas, they still have, the path to winning the East and getting home field. But I just think there's deeper issues you can run on this team. And man, zone coverage defensively, they just sucked. I mean, the 49ers were just feasting on them. You get
They're
it.
running free. And Brock Purdy, who nobody talks about him.
MVP right now.
He's efficient and he's surgical. He's 19 to 27, 70% completion rate in this game, 314 yards, 4 TDs, no interceptions, and his QBR was 148. So you can say all you want. Last player to draft, a lot of people are saying, oh, they don't respect him and everything, but he's making plays and he's not turning his football over. And as you said, when you compare the head coaches, Shanahan is scripting and making plays and pushing all the right buttons for his quarterback. And then you have Sirianni on the other side. All you see is the yelling, the screaming, the histrionics, the theatrics on the sidelines. Well, maybe do some coaching, actually pull Jalen. He's supposed to be an offensive head coach, and maybe pull him aside and talk to him about what he's not doing right and coach him up. You see Andy Reid all the time. Him and Mahomes are on the side together. Coach and quarterback got to be hand in glove. And sometimes I just don't see that with the Eagles.
Yeah, you can't just draw it in the sandbox and say, go to the Chevy and cut across the mailbox. You can't do that. Thursday night, a little different for Dallas. They get by Seattle. They put up 41. But I want to kind of go through some of these games, get your thought.
Sure.
We'll preview later on in the week. Couple games that stand out. Lions race out to that big lead against the Saints. They hang on. The Saints offense finally wakes up. But the Lions right now, I still think defensively, they need to clean things up. I have no problem with their offense. You look at their schedule, and if they didn't stub their toe against Green Bay, that got bailed out by the officiating again on Sunday night. But if the Lions don't lose that game on Thanksgiving, you're talking about a team that's won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row with Chicago, Denver, and Minnesota sitting there. Instead of 10-2, they're 9-3. But at 10-2, winning 3 more, you're looking at 13-2. Their schedule is very beneficial because they can also have an outside shot at home field. But I can see an Eagles team, a Dallas team, and 49ers going to Detroit beating the Lions. I just don't know if I can see a Lions team going on the road and beating one of those teams. So are you impressed with the Lions with that win against the Saints? Or is it just, you know what? They had the big lead. New Orleans came back, but they won the game. They took care of business.
Well, the story of this game had to be Jared Goff, and he was efficient as 1Q, and he was not making mistakes as he did the week before, where he had the 3 fumbles that he lost, and they did just enough to get the W. You talk about their defense's deficiencies, other than Hutchinson, who can get after the quarterback. If you block him, there's not a lot of playmakers on that defense, and Aaron Glenn has got to get that group in better position out there, and conversely, the Saints, Derek Carr, we talked about him kind of sleepwalking through this whole thing. I know he didn't have Rashid Shaheed, but he was missing throws out there, holding the football too long. And then he gets hurt in the game, and then you get inconsistent Jameis coming in there. He missed some throws at the end. where they could have possibly tied this game up. He threw it behind Olave a couple of times. You could see Olave was upset. But the Saints are a team, they're competing for that very bad NFC South. But when I look at Detroit, as you were saying, yeah, they possibly with that upcoming schedule where they're not playing a team that has a winning record other than Dallas in week 17, they could kind of run the table. But when you look, they're not in the same class as Philly
No.
and the Niners right now, but they could host, and we'll see from there.
The Cardinals, I mean, you looked at that game and quarterback issues again with the Steelers. Cardinals play hard. They put up 24, and you're starting to see the Steelers kind of come back down to life, back down to earth a little bit. They might actually be on the outside looking in, but then conversely, their counterpart in the AFC North, the Browns have to throw out, 65-year-old Joe Flacco, who didn't play poorly, but I think that game was more about the Rams and not really about the Browns. So you get the Steelers losing by 14 to the Cardinals, and you get the Rams absolutely waxing Cleveland. That goes in there, with a top-rated defense that just got torched for 36 points.
Yeah, Q, and the Cleveland Browns come in there averaging, they're only allowing about 17 points per game going into this game. So that's where I was like, okay, maybe Flacco can come in there, be efficient, and then Myles Garrett or somebody will get some turnovers. But the Rams, as you're saying, have jumped back into the mixer now, 6-6. Matthew Stafford threw for 279, 3 touchdowns. He's getting the ball out of his hands quickly. They're using Williams out of the backfield. Kupp and Nakua making plays as well. So the Rams are an interesting team, a team that could maybe jump into that 7th spot. Right now, they're the 8th seed if it started today, so they've been on the outside looking, but they have a huge game this week. They're at Baltimore, then they have Washington, New Orleans, at the Giants, and they finished at San Francisco. So there's some winnable games in there. And if Stafford keeps playing like this veteran that he is, I think they could be a dangerous team. And you talk about Cleveland, it's crazy because right now Cleveland would be the 7th seed.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh would be the 5th seed, as bad as they are.
Yep.
And then you have Indianapolis, so I'm sure we're talking about in a second. Indianapolis would be a 6th seed. So I expect a lot of movement between 5, 6, and 7 in the AFC in the standings. And then you had Cincinnati last night pull off that big win, and they're in the mix as well.
Yeah, and they're doing it without Burrow. Lawrence goes down. Indianapolis, another veteran backup. Minshew put up solid numbers. More importantly, did not turn the ball over. And that's a game where Tennessee had them. I mean, Tennessee, you go back and you look at that game, even though it was 17-10, and then there was a bad fumble. You talked about special teams. Tennessee gets rid of their special teams coach, but this is a 17-16 game, back-to-back punts, and then boom, what happens? Tennessee, all you got to do is get a clean punt off. That doesn't happen. You get the black punt. It's 22-19. Tennessee gets the ball back. They have a fumble. I mean, it was so comical in that second half, and it was back and forth. And then obviously it goes into overtime, and Minshew makes just enough plays with his arm and his leg. And that's a really big win for Indianapolis, because now they're 7-5. And if you had a ticket on Indianapolis to win the South, you're looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, and they have a chance there with Trevor Lawrence has a very bad high ankle sprain. So he may be out a couple weeks. And then you look at the Colts, they lose Taylor to the thumb injury, but they just kept rolling. And Uncle Rico, Minshew, he's out there getting the job done. He was 26 of 42, 312 yards, 2 TDs, no interceptions. And he also moved the chains when he need to by running a little bit. And Moss did his thing. He had 19 carries for 51 yards, but they kept the clock moving. And the guy you got to talk about when we talk about the Colts is Pittman Jr. I mean, he is just tremendous. He had 11 catches, 105 yards in a TD. And then you have Buckner and the rest of that defense that's very opportunistic. So very good win for them. And as you said, once Stonehouse gets a kick block, and they knock him out of the game, which was huge because on that extra point that they missed, he was the holder. And Tannehill, being Tannehill, he leaned the ball the wrong way. They missed the extra point, and then they go into overtime. So good win for the Colts. They're only a game behind the Jags, and they're going to factor into this because, as we said, Pittsburgh and Cleveland, they're kind of falling from the pack.
I have to By the way, so it is reported Lawrence high ankle sprain per Doug Peterson, week to week injury. So we'll see. Love to see him out there though. And also, there's a report that the Giants will be sticking with the slinging Sicilian against Green Bay, which I think that's the right move, to be honest, by the head coach, because the Jets suck. That's just a train wreck. The Giants stink. They suck. But DeVito's a story right now. If you're a New York football fan, to be honest, which is not saying much, but it's a great story for the kid. We'll talk a little more about that. Then we have to ask you about the Jets. And two things. Robert Saleh, stop texting former radio host, whether it's Joe B on FAN or anyone, but Joe B, you have to know better. Keep your mouth shut, never rat on your friends. I mean, that's a bad leak that's coming out ultimately. Rodgers apparently went on McAfee earlier today, the GM. I'm so friggin' over Aaron Rodgers. Like, honestly, shut up. You're not the GM, you're not the owner, and right now you're not even a starting quarterback. You're just taking care of an injury. You had 4 snaps in. Honestly, you had a cup of coffee with the Jets. Hall of Famer, no doubt. No doubt, Hall of Famer. Enjoy it. Go. See ya. But other than that, what are we doing here with the Jets? I mean, what are we doing? You've got these reports coming that the quarterback was reluctant to go back out there, which, if you asked me, I think his agents leaked something, called Joe Douglas and said he's reluctant because he doesn't want to get hurt. Joe Douglas then, again, this is just my thought, turned around, called Aaron Rodgers and said, yo, tell your boy to get his ass out there because his career is at stake. I mean, you've got that. You've got Robert Saleh texting Joe B and all this other nonsense. You got Rodgers going on McAfee, ripping these reports. You have a locker room that's divided. You have an offense that stinks. You have a defense that's getting tired out. I mean, it's bad. Because it's bad. I mean, heads are going to get, guys are going to start getting whacked over here. I mean, it's really bad right now. If you're, part of that Jet organization, do you believe they just need to just blow it up and start over, get rid of the coach, get rid of the offensive coordinator, get rid of the GM, get rid of Aaron Rodgers, get rid of Wilson, pull the Band-Aid off?
It's funny because you and I, all the way back when we were on Hard Knocks and everybody, there was a story and sing Kumbaya, and Salah has his PowerPoint slides and they're all excited about the season. We're like, if this goes bad, it's going to be a hot, steamy pile. And that's exactly what it is. That's what it is, Q. It's the best. That
it's like
game,
you have to really lift your foot to walk over right now. You gotta
it's horrible. And it's funny, on my show, I was talking with Angel about this.
Yeah.
The 2 games that were horrible to watch were the Jets and the Falcons, which was 13-8 win by the Falcons. And then you had the awful game of the Chargers winning 6-0 over the Patriots. I mean, are you kidding me with these 2 once proud AFC East
At least
teams?
the Patriots are showing fight defensively, right? I mean, the Jets are both. I mean, the Jets, you can sit there.
It was so ugly.
Yeah, it's just.
I watched a lot of that game, Q, and getting to the Jets. Salah is just not. He's not the guy, and he's not. We talked about earlier with Sirianni taking control of your team. You have to be a CEO type. You have to be able to delegate, and then you have to also keep things in house, and that's what they're not doing. So you're seeing a toxic locker room come together, and whether it's Boyle starting, whether it's Simeon out there, the players on the field are just not performing or not getting it done. The offseason can't come here quick enough. They're going to tear this thing down, and it's probably going to be Joe Douglas and Salah taking the brunt of this from Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson's probably ready to pull the trigger because, as you were saying, this is on national TV, and this is in the biggest city in the United States. So all eyes are on it. And then with Aaron Rodgers, he needs to just be in the trainer's room and be quiet. That's what happens when players are injured. We've seen this all. We've covered the game forever. These guys.
Well, he's not going to stop going. Not to cut you off. He's not going to stop going on McAfee because he's getting paid $1 million a year, $1 million.
Okay.
So he's not. He's
not
going
to talk about something else.
But you're right. But what is there to talk about at this point if you're Aaron Rodgers? Your rehab, and now all of a sudden backtrack. Right. Honestly, backtracking. Yeah. He's going to talk about the rehab. He's going to talk about COVID, not COVID, going back in the hole. You're walking back because now they're done. Their season's over. He's got no incentive now to certainly come back. So he almost gets bailed out. And no one's talking about this. He gets bailed out because, let's be honest, He was not coming back this year. I don't give a shit what he says. I don't care if there's this magical friggin' pill or, Robitussin to rub it on his ACL. I don't care. I do not. He was not going to come back. Now he sits and he has the out. Well, I was going to come back if they were in playoff contention. But since their season is shot to shit, you don't even have to worry about it anymore, Aaron.
Yeah, we knew he wasn't coming back. That's just all show. He has to walk into the locker room, make sure the cameras are on him, pregame and everything. It's just Rodgers being Rodgers, and he needs a reality check. He's 40, almost 40 years old. Uh, his time's over in the National Football League. It's time for other people and other young quarterbacks to shine like C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love. These guys are playing some good football, and for people to be talking about them and not him, and so Aaron Rodgers, just shut up and go in the corner.
Yeah,
That's
but
what I would say. And the
yeah,
Jets are a mess, like I said, and
yeah.
it's a shame for the New York market. This team, there was such excitement. They had been in playoffs since 2013, and it looks like it's going to be a
Told
total
us
rebuild and everything. And but Zach Wilson,
it's
he needs to go away too. So
I
it's a crazy situation there.
head coach, they're going to blow it up, man. They're going to, and the thing is, if you fire Hackett, what's Aaron Rodgers going to say? I'm not going to play. I mean, come on, man. It's just after a while, just stop. You mentioned C.J. Stroud. Texans get a real nice win. Wilson with the late pick in that one, but again, didn't play particularly poorly. Broncos see their winning streak snap. You got the Bucks getting the win over Cleveland. I want to get in. How about Sunday night, the Chiefs and the Packers, and it's probably
Yeah.
recency bias now. So I understand you want to protect the quarterback, and we can sit there and say sideline play, Patrick Mahomes, don't touch him. You do touch him, by rule, by definition, you're going to get a flag. But then they don't even throw a flag late, which is an obvious and clear
Oh,
pass interference. And again, it's not even about the fantasy football or the betting or the sports betting or the gambling. It's just as a fan watching these games, and you're saying to yourself, why can't we get any type of consistency when it comes from the officiating in the NFL? Because again, you can argue so many points and say you should have thrown the flag there. I mean, I'm Lloyd, I'm seeing flags called during commercial breaks, right? I mean, we laugh at it, but we saw it in the Eagles game. I'm also seeing flags thrown 10 seconds after the play ends. How's
yeah,
the
then they have the
NFL?
conference.
Yeah, and I understand it's bang bang. They go to New York sometimes. They want to look at something in the replay. Like for instance, not to stray too far, but we always see guys go like that real quick, put the ball over the goal line, and then it gets smacked out of their hands. But yet you see the catch in San Francisco, I think it was Ayuk, where you're allowed to bobble, and he did the right thing. He had his arm under. That is a
Sure.
catch. I don't even think that should have been reviewed, but it's by rule and definition. So we're looking at that, and people are going to scream, that's not a catch. But yet you can go like that real quick, get the ball smacked out, and yet we're going to call it a touchdown. So nobody knows what a catch is. Nobody knows what pass interference is. And it's just really bad that they're missing these obvious and evident calls.
Yeah, and you look at a sport like baseball where everything can be reviewed, and that's what the NFL needs to get to. I know they laugh at the XFL and these other alternative leagues that say, oh, we're the best and everything, but they have a review system in their league where they have the eye in the sky, and you get three challenges, and that's the way it should be in the national. They should be able to challenge it no matter what. If they have three challenges and they're available to a coach, he should be able to throw them. And the end of that game was a total mess, as you're saying, Q. There was the uh, personal foul on Mahomes, which they shouldn't have called. They stopped the clock for the Chiefs when the guy was obviously going backwards, and they said they should have kept the clock rolling. Then they stopped it there. And then that long pass, I know it had to be MVS again, which was crazy. The guy jumps on his back, you know what I mean, and tackles him, and then there's just no flag. And it was a poor ending to a pretty good game, and a good performance by the Packers where they stepped up in a situation where they're home underdog, and Mahomes was getting frustrated out there. But definitely they have to do something in terms of these officials.
Yeah. Brownie last night, played really well. McPherson drills the 48-yarder in overtime, 34-31. So Cincinnati keeping their slim playoff hopes alive. Now Jacksonville's got to worry about Trevor Lawrence being day-to-day. They're 8-4. That's a tough loss for them if you really think about it, because in 9-3, you get a little more breathing room. You don't have to worry about these teams breathing down your neck. But if you look at it, if you pull up, let me see here. So right now, Miami would be the top seed. Baltimore number 2, KC 3, Jacksonville 4, Pittsburgh 5, Cleveland 6, Indianapolis 7, Houston outside looking in at 7-5. And then NFC, Philly, San Fran, Detroit, Atlanta, Dallas, Minnesota, Green Bay. Man, that is, I mean, really not, there's just not these dominant. Like, yeah, San Fran's a dominant team. I think San Francisco is the best team right now. I said it before the season, even though I picked Detroit to pinch them off in the NFC Championship. Right now, both sides of the football, San Fran's the best team in the NFC. Kansas City, I think, is leaking a little bit of oil. Miami, what happens when you slow down that offense and they have to run the football a little bit, right?
Yeah, when they have to play a real team.
Punch them in the mouth a little bit. Yeah, Baltimore, Kansas City leaking a little bit of oil.
There's a lot of question marks out there, Q. And we always, we always point to that 2007 season where the Patriots were the big dog out there with the big marker and everybody was hunting them. And this is what the NFL wants this season. There's a lot of parity. There's going to be a lot of movement in these playoff standings in the next 5 weeks. And we're going to see which team wants to jump forward. There's also 8 teams that are 6-6. So, if you want to see good games and parity and all that and see who's going to grab destiny,
You've come
it's going to be interesting to watch this. Huh?
You've come to the right place.
Yeah, definitely. But it is frustrating when you think your team, all right, they finally turned the corner, and the next thing you know, they stubbed their toe. Just like last night, I'm sure the Jacksonville fans were like, what happened here? How do we lose this game? But they sure did, and they also lose their quarterback and one of their big weapons, Christian Kirk, and the whole narrative changed. So there's going to be a lot of movement here. And I talk about like the Dolphins. The Dolphins have Tennessee, the Jets, Dallas, and then they're at Baltimore and then Buffalo. So they end their season with 3 tough games. Buffalo, it's going to be interesting to see if they can jump back in the mix at 6-6. They have a tough road ahead of them. They have to go to KC this week, and it starts there.
All right, game ball and Lackey. Game ball.
All right.
Was it a quarterback? I always think it's a quarterback.
No, I stayed away from the quarterback this week.
Offensive weapon or defensive side of the ball?
Defensive guy.
Man, I don't know.
Yeah. I gave it to the number 3 overall pick this season, Will Anderson Jr. from the Texans. He was just dominant in that game against Denver. I mean, he had 5 tackles, 2 sacks, two tackles for loss, 4 QB hits, and 7 pressures of Russell Wilson. I mean, he was in his face all day. And then a big thing was he tipped a pass that was picked off by Derek Stingley Jr. So good win for the upstart Texans. And we talk about all the parity and everything, but this is a good story. You see this young team coming together, and that was a very good win for them, 22-17 over the Broncos. So he gets my game ball.
Lackey. Well, I mean, there were blowouts. I don't see you doing like Rivera in Washington. You know what? I'm going to go with my guy. I'm going to go with the clown show that is Nick Sirianni. And I'm going to say why. Because they were not up for that game. And I go back to the 4th and short where he elected to punt. So, and because of Big Dom, the security guard. So I'm just going to say the whole Lackey was the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to, and Nick Sirianni.
Ding, 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 ding. Great minds think alike. I mean, he's got the ball in his hands with complete touchdown. Sirianni, you had to give it to him. I mean, They allowed 456 total yards, and they only had 46 rushing yards in the game. The Eagles had 7 penalties in this one. And then, as you talked about, this organization has got to control, like Sandrio, their head of security. You're not a bouncer in the National Football League. You shouldn't be getting involved in a play on the sidelines. They need to revoke his pass. I know you and I have covered the games, and on your credential, it always says we can take this away at any time, and you can't act a fool up in there. And that's what he did, involving himself there. Shanahan got very upset, and Q, the National Football League is going to get involved in this when the Eagles are going to be
That's
fined
yeah.
and probably more in this
And,
situation.
and I misspoke earlier today on Q when I was talking to James Hasty, because he had to correct me too when I mentioned it. Again, he's head of security for the team. Sometimes when we go to these games, we cover the games, you see these guys with their backs to the action. That's regular security. So I misspoke in that regard. But you cannot touch a player, and the player certainly shouldn't touch as well. But I can't have a former player and Barrett Brooks go on the air and post game after and say, well, he's part of the coaching staff. What are we doing? Like, what do you want to get paid by the Eagles too? Like, that is just it's such a clown asinine statement. It's a really bad statement to make because it's almost condoning his actions. Now, let me ask you this. What would have happened if there was some type of skirmish and punches were thrown? And then let's just say Brock Purdy runs over to break it up, or Jalen Hurts runs over to grab AJ Brown, and in the melee, Jalen Hurts gets his ankle rolled up on, or he's pushed into a pile and gets driven into the ground and gets concussed or gets hurt or tears in it. Like, then what happens? Like, you have to control your house, and they didn't in that situation. And I'm wondering too, he's been with that organization for 20, 25 plus years. Can you see the NFL suspending him for the rest of the season? Or can you see a situation now where we do not want team security at all near the sidelines? When the quarters are over, do what you need to do. When halftime's over and you're running with the coaching staff, that's different. But during the game, no.
And that situation, everybody's doing a job there, whether it's a photographer, a guy holding a yardstick marker, and you have to play your role. And he totally didn't in that situation. In the NFL, there probably is going to be some kind of sanctioning against him. And now they always said he tries to fade into the background. Well, guess what? You're in a spotlight now, and everybody all around the country is looking at you and who you are and what you really do for the team. And I know I'm here in Philadelphia, and they're laughing about it on sports radio, and he's such a great guy, and he's part of the fabric of this team. Well, guess what? Now the commissioner is going to get involved, and it was an ugly situation because, as the ref said in the poll report, he exacerbated the situation. You could see the language he used, and he stuck his hand in a player's face. You can't do that. You can't let your emotions get that high. And we remember that, Vontez Perfect, the Bengals versus the Steelers, it was Joey Porter, and he was assistant coach in that situation. And then that caused a whole ruckus, and they both got fined and got in a lot of trouble. So I expect that the Eagles will get a letter. And as you said, the organizational dysfunction and they had lost. Sirianni gets the lackey for this week, and the Eagles have a lot to clean up. And we'll talk about that preview coming up for that Dallas game. It's going to be a fun watch on Sunday Night Football, and they have a short time to get ready for it.
Yeah, we'll do that Thursday on an edition of On Q. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us at Lloyd Vance on X, NFL writer, researcher, historian, of course, insider, Broad Street South pod, host of Lloyd Vance's Inside Football 1029 The Game, Broad Street South, and PFWA award winner, has that vote for the Black College Football Hall of Fame, and kind enough to join us on a Tuesday edition of BYP. Appreciate you, pal.
Talk to you later.